7 p.m. on a Monday evening, and we have some big news coming in. Global media reports and details which Republic TV has also accessed, once again pointing out at what could be biological warfare. We have details and the document from 2015, which is now also being investigated by the US State Department. And we have a very, very special guest joining us on the broadcast this evening. Without wasting any time, let me quickly introduce on the show this evening Dr. Li Meng Yan. Dr. Li Meng Yan is a virologist and also a whistleblower speaking to us from New York this evening. Good morning to you, Dr. Yan in New York, and good evening from all our viewers here in India. I don't know whether you had the opportunity to go through this report, but last year when you spoke of, good morning, last year when you spoke of a lab-made virus, Dr. Yan, your work was quickly discredited by a few, especially in the Western media. Today we have access to a report from 2015 of how China's PLA allegedly planned to weaponize coronaviruses, something that even the US State Department is investigating. Dr. Yan.
Yes. So this textbook actually is published by the PLA bioweapon expert General De Zhongxu, and also the senior officer working in the General Logistics Department of PLA, Chinese Liberation Military Army. So they are the one in charge of it, and also they get the full support from the PLA officers and also, of course, Chinese Communist Party government. And this is published through the military medical press. So this is a textbook, and for the common sense in China, textbook means this is something definitely has to get fully approved from the government and then get published. Means this is the same thing the government want and going to do.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Li Meng Yan, what do you know about this document, this 2015 document, or the PLA alleged module on coronavirus? This report, we are told, is now being investigated by the US State Department. What do you know about it or the module?
Okay, actually, I looked through this book, and also I'm translating this into English with many of our Chinese volunteers, and we are going to present this to the world in English to help people understand it more. So from what I know, that this is a very good evidence to support my 3 reports and to verify that the coronavirus COVID-19 is actually the Chinese government's long-term non-traditional bioweapon project. I called it as unrestricted bioweapon project result. So this coronavirus from SARS-1 in 2003 to MERS in 2010, and then now it's the third time had the outbreak among the human. And among all these 3 times, China is always the country which study it best, because I work in the WHO reference lab in the University of Hong Kong. We are the top coronavirus lab in the world. We have the top coronavirologists leading by Professor Malik Paris and so many other famous people. So we know China government actually have the best materials and knowledge about this. And also from SARS-1, they really realized that this is a good material to develop the non-traditional bioweapon, which means the mortality doesn't need to be high. It can be low, but the main result is it can be long-lasting in the society. It targets human very well, and it's invisible, easy carry, also stable in the environment, and also the secondary damage will ruin the enemy's society and also economics. That is a key point they want to achieve by using this unrestricted bioweapon. which you can see are verified in our reality now.
Now, 1 second. Now, you're telling us, Dr. Yan, you're telling us that you're translating the book, and if I heard you correctly, you're also telling our viewers that the point of this module or this doctrine was to paralyze growing economies, if that's what I heard you say correctly. And you're saying
Exactly.
that the intent was also to paralyze the medical system of countries. Is that correct?
That is part of the things they want to reach by using this unrestricted bioweapon. Because if you use the traditional bioweapon, they also have explained in their textbook that people may die suddenly. The mortality may be over 10% immediately, but that is easy to be found and easy to be identified as bioweapon. But this bioweapon, you know what is the key point? As non-traditional and also unrestricted, because it looks like nature occurring. That is the most important character of this non-traditional bioweapon, this unrestricted one. And they said the only gold standard to identify it from the really nature occurring pathogens to the artificial, lab-made, lab-enhanced coronavirus is to check the natural evolution progress. If it doesn't match the natural evolution history, so that means this is man-made from the lab. That is all presented in my previous 3 Yen reports. We go through the scientific evidence and also intelligence evidence. And also I mentioned about this book in the 3rd report published at the end of March. So these are the things they want to do. And also the emphasis in the textbook, that is, if people from other countries or even people among them stand out to speak the truth out, then their management is to deny and lie. So that is the unrestricted scientific misinformation campaign, as we see now all over the world, from the Western to China. And also, you can see what happened in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China. You hear about it every day. You know that is lie. You know the WHO origin theory. The report is lie. But what can you do if you don't have the law or if you don't understand how to deal with this? Then you're wasting your time, and that's also China government want.
Are you saying that the WHO report is highly biased and refused or failed to get into the details and the scientific study? Are you simply calling it a cover-up job?
Yes, I think more than cover up a job, it's basically a hilarious job. I mean, we may never see such hilarious official report from the big organization like WHO in our history. From the beginning to now, from the January 2020, when I start to review the WHO cover-up with Chinese Communist Party when I was in Hong Kong, until now, we see WHO is working with Chinese Communist Party. They have a lot of hidden connection between the scientists and also the Chinese Communist Party. And also, they work to promote the nature origin theory. They try to emphasize that this is something not related to China. This is just something you would meet. And if you meet it, you need to learn from China government to know how to suppress this virus. But actually in China, they are celebrating their anti-COVID trophy because after 1 year, the economic is broke up in all over the world. But China government thought they are the winner.
Yeah, that's true. Last year, now assuming that this report is accurate, and assuming that this report is found out to be true, last year you challenged social media giants to debate your research paper. Do you believe this report has proven you right? Do you think now
Yes,
countries, social media platforms, researchers, scientists will have to look at it more closely?
what I want to tell is, since I stay in public from last July in US, China government actually used a lot of money and spent a lot of effort to attack me. Actually, that's even before my first appearance on Fox News. They started spreading rumors online and dismiss my reputation, deny my work, and also they have a lot of cyber army, those kind of woman military. I think Indian people may be very familiar with them now. And also they have influenced by the media, by the journalists, and also they have their scientists like the Robert Gallo, the big HIV guy, the Titan in the University of Maryland, and also like Professor Gigi in the Johns Hopkins University. Such people, they start to write the hilarious report, full of lies, none about the science, to refute my reports and my work. But now we say after half years, although I list all this, part of the Chinese Communist Party, PLA scientists, and also overseas scientists who are working in the misinformation campaign, and also I use the prompt refute to response to them in my third report. None of them can stand out and face to face with me, have the live show on the influential media to tell people their evidence. And the people can judge my evidence compared to their evidence. Let's see whether this virus is come from lab, whether this is a bioweapon, and most importantly, whether this virus is intentionally released to attack people. So from that time to now, I haven't met any of such people, even from China government. They cannot send any expert come out to face to me and argue with this. Yes, this document is just one of the evidence which support my statement. And that statement actually back from the last January until now never changed. SARS-CoV-2 is made in PLA controlled lab using their unit. They discovered Zhoushan-bad coronavirus ZC45 or ZXC21, and that is bioweapon to attack people. It's intentionally released.
Okay, one last question before I let you go, Dr. Yan. Do you believe there are various vested interests globally, vested interests who want the truth to be hidden? Now, do you believe this time around, if the US State Department is investigating this report, Australia is talking about it, different countries around the world are looking at it, do you think there will be accountability or a cover-up?
I think they are investigating it because we can say the good progress. But I also want to remind the government and also media that there are a lot of misinformation and there are a lot of people, they pretend to be expert but mislead you. For example, there is a very famous theory that the coronavirus actually is from man cave in west of China, in Yunnan, which Dr. Zheng Lishi, the bad woman, went there to search it and bring it to the lab, and by accident, it's released. So this is not real. And how this government and also media get involved into this theory, because there are some people online and also in secret spreading such misinformation mixed with real information to affect the innocent Western people, even in fact affect the innocent Chinese people. So that's how I said China government has also written in that textbook that this is the way you can manipulate, deny, and also cheat, and they have no idea and their time gets wasted. But you should know that in a unrestricted bio warfare, timing is very important. If you waste your time, then you waste your chance to win this battle. So I'm happy to see more and more people start to realize it. People
Dr.
woke up
Yan,
and the media woke up. That's good thing.
now, Dr. Yan, I want to ask you something. Now, you seem to know something about this doctrine, this module, whatever you call it. Now, the obvious question is, if let's assume China has launched this biowarfare. Now, some of the questions that people have on their mind is on what scale it is happening, and if there is an antidote to regulate it.
Tyson, you mean from when it starts? Can you repeat your question? Sorry, I didn't hear it well.
Yes. Yes. Now, how is it that how is it that, let's assume for a second that it was China that introduced this biowarfare. How is it that China itself is not affected? How is it that the Chinese population was not affected, was spared? Do they have a drug, an antidote? How are they regulating it?
Okay, first, let me tell you, in China, there are more people died, far more than you know, from the number reported. And that's why from last January, I need to stand out and tell people through the older media, anonymously, to deliver the message out, tell that China government is covering up, and if not hold it under control in time, the world will suffer a crazy pandemic even. But unfortunately, it become true now. So in China, especially from Wuhan, the place that we see the virus start get outbreak, there are many people dead, but the government doesn't care about people's life, even though that is a Chinese citizen's life. You know, if you know our history, you will know Chinese Communist Party never care about human life. They thought they have 1.4 billion people, which is very cheap and useful when they need. So that is basically just like some material you can throw out after using. So based on that kind of thinking, they just let people die in Wuhan and all over China, and then they suppress the numbers, suppress the voice, suppress the media. That's the thing. Finally, you saw in China, the damage is very little. On the other hand, that China government, because they design it, although what I can tell you that there is no magic antidotes and there is no efficient vaccines against COVID-19 based on the character, based on the nature of this virus. But China government also know that some cheap and safe drugs like hydroxychloroquine and also other drugs can be used for treatment. And also very important thing is hydroxychloroquine combined with other drugs can be used as safe, and also the early treatment is very, very important. But somehow they try to mislead some other countries, and I say it seems, works. So for example, in US, we say they don't allow doctors to use hydroxychloroquine. We accept the previous top medical journal even published the fake data to suppress the effective management by using hydroxychloroquine to save people's life. And also in China now, people are still under the very inhumanity control. That means they can lock down you at any time if you want. That is worse than you thought the lockdown happened in UK or US, and people basically just get locked at home. No drug, no food, no water, they don't care, just to lock you like in the cages. And also they give compulsory vaccine by using their poor quality China-made vaccines. All these things are very terrible. And of course, I know I can tell you that the higher level officers, they know how to take hydroxychloroquine and other drugs as prophylaxis because they know that it's much better than their vaccines.
Yeah. Dr. Li Meng Yan, I thank you for your time and for speaking to us. We will be in touch. We can go on and talk about this. I think it's a longer conversation. But we will speak on another day. Thank you for speaking to Republic TV this evening on the biggest story tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to do it later with you.
The anti-vaccination attitude isn't a new one, but it's a relevant discussion to clear up right now. Besides the political undertones dividing people over the COVID-19 vaccine, there's also been a lot of bad press to navigate. Here are myths about the COVID-19 vaccine you should stop believing. COVID-19 deaths are less common in young adults than they are in older people and people with underlying medical conditions. As of mid-February, according to the Heritage Foundation, analyzing data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, roughly 93% of COVID-19 deaths have occurred in people over the age of 55, while only 0.2% are under the age of 25. But that doesn't mean young people are immune or that they can't spread the virus around to others. Most doctors agree, if you're young and healthy, you should still plan to get the shot when it's your turn. That's because even rare complications can still happen. But more importantly, young people can still pass COVID-19 along to others. In fact, according to Johns Hopkins Medicine, people under the age of 30 account for more than 20% of all COVID-19 cases. And there's a correlation between spikes in cases in this age group and subsequent spikes in older groups, which seems to suggest that young people are picking up the virus and then passing it on to older family members. If you've already had COVID-19 and have natural immunity, why would you also need vaccine immunity? The answer to that question is complicated. For starters, whether you've contracted COVID-19 before or not, there's really no reason not to get the vaccine, because you're not any more likely to experience negative side effects if you have naturally acquired antibodies. But it's probably also true that the immunity you get from the vaccine may actually be better at preventing future disease. According to CNN, there have been cases of people becoming reinfected with COVID-19 after they've recovered, so natural immunity isn't perfect. Vaccines, on the other hand, can be designed to prompt a stronger immune response, so the antibodies you produce in response to a vaccine may actually do a better job of protecting you than the antibodies you produce in response to natural infection.
I just decided I'm not going to do it. I'm a guinea pig if that's the case.
Considering the incredible speed at which the vaccines for COVID-19 were developed, it may seem like the vaccines were rushed into production, but they've actually been in development for decades. That's because the virus that causes COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, is closely related to the virus that causes SARS, known as SARS-CoV, which the world has known about since 2002. According to a paper published in the Journal of Biomedical Science, the SARS outbreak of 2002 and the MERS outbreak that followed a decade later prompted scientists to begin developing a vaccine that worked against the distinctive spike proteins that are unique to coronaviruses. So a lot of the work that was needed to complete a COVID-19 vaccine had already been done. And the mRNA technology, which both the Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna vaccines use, is not exactly a new thing either. According to the CDC, scientists have been experimenting with mRNA vaccines for decades, which means that even though the vaccines are relatively new to the public, years' worth of research has already gone into how to safely develop them within the scientific community. In other words, while the virus itself may be new, scientists did not have to start from scratch to come up with vaccines for it. A typical vaccine being developed takes more than a decade to get to market. That's not because vaccine development takes a long time, it's because getting through the regulatory process takes a long time. But there's a perception that development takes a long time because of all the safety testing, which naturally has led to a perception that the fast-tracked COVID-19 vaccine must have undergone less safety testing than what's typical. According to the New York Times, all of the COVID-19 vaccines, including the more than 70 different vaccines that are still in clinical trials, undergo a rigorous safety testing process, beginning with preclinical testing on animals. When that's complete, the vaccine enters phase 1 trials in a small number of humans. During phase 2, researchers give the vaccine to a few hundred people before moving into phase 3, where thousands of volunteers receive the vaccine. All the COVID-19 vaccines that are currently available have undergone all phases of safety testing, and safety monitoring is still ongoing. The vaccine did move through the process quickly, but that's only because it didn't have to wade through as much bureaucracy as other vaccines. All vaccines can have side effects. If you get a COVID-19 shot, you can expect to have a sore arm, or, less commonly, develop a short-lived fever and some other mild side effects like headache, fatigue, and body aches. And the side effects may be worse following the second shot. But that's not because you're becoming ill with COVID-19, but rather because your body's immune system is ramping up. The rumor that the vaccine's side effects happen 50 times more often than side effects from the flu vaccine came from a single article that was widely shared on Facebook, but was eventually flagged for misinformation.
Just go to Facebook and you'll get bombarded with the people thinking that the vaccine is going to kill them.
This claim is based on data obtained from a federal reporting system that records adverse reactions. Because COVID-19 vaccines are still being monitored as a part of the safety testing process, many more adverse reactions end up in that database compared to those that may occur after other vaccines. In other words, people are a lot less likely to report side effects from a flu vaccine than they are from a COVID-19 vaccine. And that makes it look like the COVID-19 vaccine causes more side effects than it actually does. This particular myth, it turns out, was a misinterpretation of statistics. According to Reuters, social media rumors say that a vaccine with 90% efficacy would be pointless against a virus with a survival rate of 99%. But even if these numbers were true, this isn't the right way to compare them. A 90% efficacy rate for a vaccine does not mean 10% of those who receive the COVID-19 vaccine will die from the disease. It means 10% of those who receive the vaccine will still be vulnerable to getting the virus, but the vaccine can still help prevent the people who do get sick from requiring hospitalization. That 99% survival rate number for COVID-19 isn't accurate either. Globally, the case fatality rate is more like 2%, which doesn't seem so awful until you consider just how contagious COVID-19 is. So a low overall fatality rate is no reason to discount the value of the vaccine. Here's a quick fact check for you. None of the vaccines against COVID-19 contain microchips. Unsurprisingly, this is a rumor someone made up to discredit the vaccine and the people who promote it. It has no basis in fact, and if you want to make sure the government isn't tracking you, getting rid of your cell phone is a much better strategy than shunning a life-saving vaccine. The vaccines we're more familiar with, like the MMR and chickenpox vaccines, contain what's called a live attenuated virus, which is basically just a weakened version of the virus they're aiming to inoculate you against. These vaccines can cause the recipient to develop mild symptoms of the disease, but they rarely make anyone genuinely ill. There are also vaccines, like the one for rabies, that are inactivated. These also contain a virus, but it's not live. Still, it's reasonable for people to assume that COVID-19 vaccines work the same way. However, the COVID-19 vaccine is a completely different technology. Both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are mRNA vaccines, and they contain no virus at all. Instead, the vaccine teaches your body how to produce the COVID-19 virus's distinctive spike proteins, which are the structures the virus uses to latch onto and enter the cells in your body. Then your immune system learns to build antibodies against the protein. To build immunity, your body doesn't even need to encounter the virus itself, which means there is no way you can get COVID-19 from the vaccine. mRNA is not a kind of DNA. It's actually an important component of a three-part system. The DNA contains the genetic instructions for building proteins. The ribosomes actually build the proteins, but the mRNA is the guy who carries the instructions from the DNA to the ribosomes, so the ribosomes know what to do. Still, anytime you hear the word genetic, it can have some scary connotations, so it's easy to see why some people think the COVID-19 vaccine might actually do scary things to your DNA. According to Health Feedback, the mRNA contained in the COVID-19 vaccine never goes anywhere near your cell's DNA. It's only there to provide the instructions on how to make the spike protein. After your cells make the protein, they actually destroy the instructions, so you don't even have to worry that your out-of-print spike protein manual will be floating around in your body forever. After that process, the protein itself gets sent to the surface of your cells, where your immune system finds it and starts creating antibodies, thus generating immunity. It's safe to say we've all grown tired of our most popular pandemic fashion accessory, the face mask. Unfortunately, though, you don't get to tear it off, toss it in the nearest bonfire, and then hug a stranger moments after you've gotten your COVID-19 shot. According to NPR, you won't even have 50% immunity until a few weeks after your first shot, and you won't reach that coveted 95% immunity until a week after your second shot. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention considers people to be fully vaccinated 2 weeks after their second dose of the Moderna or Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, or 2 weeks after the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The vaccine will help slow down the pandemic, and eventually it will be over. But the vaccine alone can't stop COVID-19. According to the Mayo Clinic, we can only achieve herd immunity when 70% of the population has antibodies against the disease. When you consider that roughly 30% of Americans say they aren't planning to get the vaccine, that means we have to work really hard to make sure that every single person who does plan to get the vaccine can do so. Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca. You've heard these names plenty of times, but do you know how the COVID-19 vaccines compare to each other? Make room in the medical history books. For the first time, vaccines have been made using RNA technology, though the technology has been in the works for a long time. A 2018 Nature Reviews Drug Discovery article reported that mRNA vaccines show promise in battling a slew of infectious diseases. With the urgency of the coronavirus pandemic and the global collaboration of scientists, the timetable to create an mRNA vaccine was moved up. That said, scientists still had time to perform multiple studies testing for safety. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention explains that mRNA vaccines, like the Moderna and Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines, teach the body to make a small, harmless viral protein. The protein is quickly detected and neutralized by immune cells, but it's enough time for immune cells to remember it. The first dose of mRNA vaccine acts as a study guide, prepping the immune cells on what's to come and quizzing them on how to best address a potential threat. The second dose works as exam day. The immune system has studied and knows the material, in this case, the spike protein, like the back of their hand. When it encounters the viral protein, it quickly answers by deploying a robust immune response. Just as there are many ways to make a cake, there are several ways to make a vaccine. Pharmaceutical companies AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson took a more conventional route and used a weakened or dead virus to stimulate the immune system into action. JAMA explains that these vaccines, dubbed viral vector vaccines, work by injecting a weakened adenovirus, the culprit for the common cold, but it also houses a gene for the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. The vector is designed so that once in the body, it's unable to cause infection. Once in the cells, it releases viral DNA. Then, the cells use the viral DNA to produce harmless spike proteins, which alert the body of a foreign presence. It destroys it, leaving behind antibodies and immune cells with an encyclopedic memory that can recall and alert the immune system when the spike protein is detected again. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirms that viral vector vaccines have been well studied in clinical trials and are effective in taking down deadly infectious diseases. The bottom line is,
when the vaccine becomes available, take it.
unlike the other COVID-19 vaccines, Johnson & Johnson is a one-and-done shot. It takes just one dose to create a robust immune response. This one dose is 66% effective at preventing moderate and severe COVID-19 infections and hospitalization. Cody Meisner, a pediatric infectious disease specialist from the Tufts University School of Medicine, explained at an FDA advisory committee meeting, "It's important that people do not think that one vaccine is better than others. All of them seem to be equally effective in preventing severe disease with intensive care needs and death." Dr. Sandra Freihofer, internist, told the American Medical Association, "The good thing about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is it's one dose and you're done. You don't have to go back for a second dose. You don't have to make a second appointment. You can get fully vaccinated at one visit." Except for Johnson & Johnson, all other COVID-19 vaccines in circulation as of this video require 2 doses to achieve full immunity. A February 2021 report in JAMA explains that 2 doses are necessary because clinical trial research from Moderna and Pfizer found, quote, a relatively weak immune reaction weeks after people were administered 1 dose. However, a more robust immune response was observed when given the 2nd dose. JAMA also cautions that partial immunity could lead to less protection against COVID-19 variants. JAMA put it plainly, there is no evidence that people who get only 1 dose have adequate long-term protection against COVID-19 infection. There has been a lot of discussion over the efficacy of 1 shot with the AstraZeneca vaccine. However, the World Health Organization continues to recommend 2 doses. They say further research is needed to test the long-term effects of a single shot. In areas where the AstraZeneca vaccine is given, you will need to return for a 2nd dose, but not for a while. A preprint study, meaning it is yet to be peer-reviewed and verified by scientists, suggests that scheduling doses farther apart may provide even better immunity. The results showed the vaccine was 82.4% effective when delayed 3 months apart, compared to the 54.9% efficacy observed 6 weeks apart. WHO likewise recommends some time between doses, specifically 8 to 12 weeks, or 2 to 3 months apart. While it's essential to receive 2 doses of either the Moderna or Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine in the US, and while you should make every effort to make it to your scheduled appointment, there is some wiggle room. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine should be administered 21 days apart, and the Moderna vaccine should be administered 28 days apart. The timing mirrors the timing of when the 2nd dose was given in clinical trials. The CDC recommends sticking to your appointment date whenever possible, of course, but the vaccine efficacy shouldn't change if the 2nd dose is administered 4 days earlier. And if you must delay your 2nd dose, both mRNA vaccines can be given up to 6 weeks after the first shot. The AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine has not been authorized for use in the United States because the maker has not yet filed for an emergency use authorization with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. When AstraZeneca announced its initial results of its vaccine being 90% effective, it soon came to light that different doses were used in the trial, making results inconsistent. In March 2021, AstraZeneca released its Phase 3 trial results showing high effectiveness and no safety concerns. But in less than a day, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases released a statement saying that, quote, AstraZeneca may have included outdated information from that trial, which may have provided an incomplete view of the efficacy data. The vaccine has also been under fire for the potential to cause blood clots, causing some countries to suspend use temporarily. The European Medicine Agency finds a very rare potential risk for blood clotting. Based on the results, AstraZeneca announced in early April 2021 that it's updating its vaccine label to include the warning. Could this vaccine make its way to the States? Dr. Anthony Fauci, the top infectious disease specialist in the U.S., told CNN in early April 2021, even if the FDA deems that this vaccine is a very good vaccine, we don't need yet again another very good vaccine. We have enough very good vaccines. At the end of 2020, scientists found several strains with different mutations on the coronavirus spike protein. The B.1.1.7 variant, aka Alpha, is one example where mutations helped make it more transmissible and deadly. Since its emergence in the UK, it has become the dominant strain in the United States. Other strains, including ones found in South Africa and Brazil, have mutations that allow them to be undetected by the immune system. Moderna and Pfizer vaccines were created before the variants of concern began circulating worldwide. Nevertheless, Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson have proven to work effectively against the B.1.1.7 variant. Additionally, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was tested in clinical trials in Brazil and South Africa when the variants were circulating. While Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine has a lower overall efficacy than the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, the University of California, San Francisco explains that it nonetheless shows strong protection against severe infection and hospitalization.
So even though the prevention of mild disease is lower, then the prevention of severe disease, hospitalizations, and death is outstanding.
Even though it's rare, allergic reactions to the COVID-19 vaccine can occur in people who have a history of allergies after vaccinations. Reena Patel, a board-certified medical doctor in family medicine and urgent care physician at Garnet Health, told Verywell Health, Data early on showed about 1 in 100,000 chance of having a severe reaction. The overall risk is still small, but in the group of people who did have a severe reaction, more than 70% had a previous history of severe allergies. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says allergic reactions can occur from an ingredient of the vaccine. They advise people who are allergic to polyethylene glycol to avoid the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. Instead, they should see about getting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. On the other hand, you should not get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine if you have an allergy to polysorbate. Instead, request either the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine. The CDC explains that it's important to discuss with your doctor whether a COVID-19 vaccine is safe for you to take if you have allergy concerns over ingredients, or if you're allergic to other vaccines. To end the pandemic, the world needs to reach herd immunity. AstraZeneca might be the key to achieving this. According to Business Insider, AstraZeneca pledged not to profit from its vaccine during the pandemic. Plus, their manufacturing and distribution make it cheaper to distribute than the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. And unlike the mRNA vaccines, the AstraZeneca vaccine can be stored in a regular fridge for up to 6 months. AstraZeneca said in a press release, "The vaccine's simple supply chain and our no-profit pledge and commitment to broad, equitable, and timely access means it will be affordable and globally available, supplying hundreds of millions of doses on approval." The convenience of the AstraZeneca vaccine will help make vaccines more accessible to countries that cannot compete with massive vaccine purchase orders from the United States and the United Kingdom. The downside to the Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines is their storage requirements. They need to be stored in specialty freezers. According to Science News, mRNA is fragile and needs to be kept frozen to ensure it doesn't break down before injection. Inflexible storage requirements make it less viable for some other countries. Jessica Atwell, assistant scientist at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, told Verywell Health, "Doing that in high-income countries like the US is one thing. Trying to do that in low- and middle-income countries around the world, where even a normal 2 to 8 degrees Celsius refrigerator-like temperature can be really difficult in many parts of the world." Vaccine side effects may not be pleasant, but they're not a bad thing. They are a sign that your body is in training and getting ready to knock out COVID-19 if it ever shows up. While side effects are a good sign, just knowing this fact doesn't make them any more fun. However, Healthline revealed that fewer people reported side effects with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine compared to the mRNA vaccines in clinical trials. And most side effects from mRNA vaccines tend to happen after the second dose, which isn't an issue with Johnson & Johnson's single-shot dose. Of course, this doesn't guarantee that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine always comes with more minor side effects. In early April, the FDA temporarily halted the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to analyze 6 reports of a severe blood clot following vaccination. The FDA revealed on April 23rd, "We've lifted the pause based on the FDA and CDC's review of all available data, and in consultation with medical experts and based on recommendations from the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, we have concluded that the known and potential benefits of the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine outweigh its known and potential risks in individuals 18 years of age and older." All FDA-authorized vaccines are effective against COVID-19, but numbers show they differ in efficacy. Stat News revealed that the Pfizer vaccine is 95% effective at preventing symptomatic infection from COVID-19 after 2 doses. In contrast, the Moderna vaccine is 94.1% effective. Johnson & Johnson's one-shot vaccine is 66% effective against moderate or severe COVID-19 infection globally, 72% effective in the United States, 66% effective in South America, and 57% effective in South Africa. The differences are because of the variants. Moderna and Pfizer released their clinical results before the emergence of variants. For this reason, it's difficult to compare each vaccine because they were created at different time points in the pandemic and with different populations. As Stat News explains, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccines are authorized for use in people 18 years and older in the United States. Similarly, the European Medicines Agency approved the AstraZeneca vaccine for people 18 and up. The Pfizer vaccine was first authorized for people over the age of 16. In April 2021, Pfizer submitted a request to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration in an effort to expand emergency use authorization to 12 to 15-year-olds based on a pediatric trial in which the company found a 100% efficacy in preventing severe infection. The following month, the FDA authorized its use in children aged 12 to 15. As of this video, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson are conducting clinical trials to test their COVID-19 vaccine safety and effectiveness in adolescents.
So, you've had COVID-19. Maybe you even thought it wasn't as bad as the media has been making it out to be. You might have felt a little under the weather for a little while, or lost your sense of taste and smell for a few weeks. But now, well, now you feel fine. In that case, you might be forgiven for thinking that now that you're full of antibodies, you shouldn't need to get vaccinated against COVID. Right? Wrong. In fact, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention definitively answers this question on its frequently asked questions page, where it reads, yes, you should be vaccinated regardless of whether you already had COVID-19. That's because experts do not yet know how long you are protected from getting sick again after recovering from COVID-19. Other medical experts cite the variants spreading around much of the country as another reason to get vaccinated. Dr. Becky Smith, an infectious disease doctor at Duke University Hospital, told CNN, "We are not sure if natural immunity will protect someone from getting infected with the new strains." Meanwhile, Dr. Antonio Crespo, director of infectious disease at the Orlando Health Medical Group, told the outlet, "The risk of reinfection remains low, but we have to be vigilant with the emergence of the new variants." Although there is consensus that natural antibodies developed from infection do offer some protection against COVID-19, vaccines certainly offer better protection. For people who exhibited no symptoms or just mild symptoms when they had the virus, antibodies also may disappear faster. As UCLA reports, in people with mild cases of COVID-19, antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes the disease, drop sharply over the first 3 months after infection, decreasing by roughly half every 36 days. Dr. Becky Smith also told CNN that the vaccines can offer something like a top-up to those who had a mild or asymptomatic case of COVID-19. She explained, "It is very clear that the two available vaccines afford a high level of protection as measured in neutralizing antibody titers. This may be particularly important for people who had an asymptomatic or mild infection. It is also recommended that people wait until they are no longer experiencing COVID-19 symptoms before receiving any of the vaccines. Also, if you had COVID-19 and were treated with monoclonal antibodies, you should wait at least 90 days before getting vaccinated." Meanwhile, unsubstantiated reports have circulated to suggest that those who had the virus only need 1 dose of the Moderna or Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. But Dr. Smith told CNN that not enough research has been done to determine whether 1 shot is enough. As such, even if you had COVID-19, you should keep to the 2-dose regimen. Pfizer recommends both doses should be taken 3 weeks apart, while Moderna recommends 4 weeks. And then there are the side effects. While minor side effects can occur after any vaccination, the COVID-19 vaccine side effects have attracted much attention in the media. The most common side effect is a sore arm, which is usually felt around 24 hours after receiving the shot. You may also feel like you briefly have the flu, with many of the symptoms overlapping with a relatively mild case of COVID.
The day that I got the shot, my arm got pretty sore. And then the next day when I woke up, I just had some kind of general fatigue.
These symptoms can include a headache, fever, chills, muscle aches, and occasionally nausea or diarrhea. If you have already had COVID, you are more likely to experience side effects from the first of the 2-dose vaccines, while people who have not had COVID tend to feel more side effects with the second. Of course, some people, whether they have had COVID or not, end up with nothing but a sore arm. Either way, the risk of coming down with these relatively mild side effects should not deter anyone from getting the vaccine. As Dr. Thomas Campbell of UC Health University of Colorado Hospital explains, everyone should get their vaccine as soon as it is offered to them. Getting the vaccine is the best way to protect yourself against severe and potentially life-threatening illnesses from COVID-19.
Right now, we are living in abnormal times, and it's normal to have a response where you're feeling anxious or stressed when abnormal things are going on. There are a number of things you can do to maintain your wellness in a difficult and stressful time. The first thing I like to talk with people about is the idea of making sure you do a good job of maintaining a boundary between work and home. It's really easy to forget the boundaries between the two so that your work and home life balance bleed into each other, and that can lead to a lot of stress. In order to stop that from being a major problem, we're recommending that people are a little bit more vigilant in their scheduling to make sure that there are clear demarcated boundaries between what's work and what's home. So making sure that you have built-in time to your day to take a break from work, to get outside, and to really not be focusing on work is an important first step. The second thing people are struggling with is time management. One of the biggest problems we're finding is that we all have a lot more stuff on our plate, and it's really hard not to feel like we have to attend to everything. So it's really important to also maintain a tighter schedule and be more consistent with people who you're working at a distance now with at what you can and can't get done. The third thing that's really important in order to maintain your wellness is to make sure you're getting a proper amount of activity and you're actually getting outside of your house as much as possible. We're recommending that people maybe increase the amount of things they're doing for physical activity, creating that routine of activity, whether it's intense exercise or just getting out and going for a walk around the block with a loved one is something that you're making sure happens on a regular basis. A fourth thing that's really important is to make sure to work time in directly devoted, and in particular to activities that help you cultivate other interests. For some people, that means starting to cook home-cooked meals more often or more regularly. For others, that means playing board games, and still others are starting new hobbies. All of those things can be great for helping you maintain a sense that there are other things in your life going on and filling your time. If you're struggling with excessive anxiety, worry, difficulty sleeping, difficulty with depression, those are things that behavioral health providers are absolutely standing by and ready and waiting to help you. Please know that at university hospitals, we've paid special attention to making sure that we have behavioral resources available for people that need that help. While this is a challenging time, rest assured, we're all going to get through this together.
Over a year after the COVID-19 pandemic began, we've come a long way, but the numbers remain worrisome. In an effort to offset a rise in cases, the White House plans to offer COVID-19 booster shots to vaccinated adults. Here's everything we know about them. There is a good chance that you have some passing familiarity with the notion of booster shots. That's because 50 out of 50 states require students to get vaccinated before they start school, and many common childhood vaccines require boosters, like the MMR and Tdap. A booster shot is a subsequent shot of any given vaccine that requires it, at some interval after the original vaccine was given. Booster shots, like vaccines in general, are part of routine healthcare in the U.S., according to the CDC's recommended vaccine schedule. In fact, sometime in the last 10 years, it's likely your primary care physician or physician's assistant recommended that you get a tetanus booster. Why? Because tetanus can kill you, and in order to remain immune to it, your body needs a booster shot every 10 years. The bottom line is that some vaccinations require a booster in the form of a subsequent dose of the same vaccine to remain effective as time goes on. However, the reason some vaccines decrease in effectiveness over time is considered an unsolved medical mystery at this point. What is known, though, is that unlike the initial vaccine, a booster does not teach your immune system how to respond when faced with the virus in question, but rather reminds your immune system how to respond. From even before the COVID-19 vaccine rollout in the United States, scientists in this country and around the world have been following the data as it comes out, both regarding the performance and risks associated with the COVID-19 vaccines authorized by the FDA. Thus far, it's been observed that these vaccines are continuing to protect people from severe COVID-19 and death from the virus. However, scientific studies have indicated that the strength of all such vaccines may be waning over time. This leaves the currently fully vaccinated population open to contracting COVID-19 with mild or moderate symptoms. Additionally, the White House has said that the strength and contagiousness of the Delta variant increases the need for a booster.
COVID-19 booster shots are coming.
This means that an increasing number of vaccinated people may be or may become increasingly vulnerable to contracting COVID-19. many without realizing it due to their mild to moderate symptoms, and they, in turn, can then spread COVID-19 to others, both vaccinated and unvaccinated. In fact, the available data has now made clear this is what's happening. A number of other countries, including Israel, France, and Germany, are already offering or planning on offering booster shots of their existing COVID-19 vaccines. Other health organizations around the world are also moving in that direction. U.S. officials announced August 18th that they have concluded that a booster shot will be needed.
It is now our clinical judgment that the time to lay out a plan for COVID-19 boosters is now.
Prior to the White House announcing plans to roll out COVID-19 booster shots, the CDC had expressed concern about the COVID-19 vaccines potentially not providing the same level of immunity to the immunocompromised population as they do for the general population. This is not strictly a COVID-19 specific phenomenon, but rather something that is seen in the field of vaccinations in general, with regard to people with weakened immune systems. Further, data released by the CDC suggest that 44% of breakthrough cases of COVID-19, cases that occur after full vaccination, are occurring in immunocompromised people. This is a concern both to such people and also anyone with whom they come into contact. Accordingly, the CDC has been recommending that people whose immune systems are compromised receive an additional dose of the Pfizer or Moderna COVID-19 vaccine they'd already received.
Is that third shot we've seen from CDC data will mount that effective immune response up to 50%.
While this might seem like a booster shot, the CDC clarified, this additional dose intended to improve immunocompromised people's response to their initial vaccine series is not the same as a booster dose given to people when the immune response to a primary vaccine series is likely to have waned over time. That might sound like splitting hairs, but the point the CDC is making is that discussions regarding booster shots are separate from discussions regarding additional doses for the immunocompromised. Booster shots will first be made available to those who were vaccinated earliest, including healthcare providers, long-term care facility residents, and senior citizens. Due to the decreasing vaccine effectiveness that happens with time, this prioritization makes sense. In addition, this plan also takes into account the risk the virus poses to them as a result of prolonged exposure, as well as factors such as age and infirmity, according to the CDC. Like the initial COVID-19 vaccines, they will be offered free of charge, according to the Wall Street Journal. The joint statement of medical experts and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services said, "Our top priority remains staying ahead of the virus and protecting the American people from COVID-19 with safe, effective, and long-lasting vaccines, especially in the context of a constantly changing virus and epidemiologic landscape." The plan is to begin offering booster shots in fall 2021, although this plan is subject to the Food and Drug Administration's evaluation of how safe and effective a third dose of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are. The CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices also must issue booster dose recommendations based on their review of the evidence. Assuming these contingencies fall into place as expected, the Department of Health and Human Services plans to offer booster shots to all fully vaccinated Americans starting on September 20th. Those who contributed to this statement include CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky, Acting Commissioner of the FDA Dr. Janet Woodcock, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy, Director of the National Institutes of Health Dr. Francis Collins, and Chief Medical Advisor to the President Dr. Anthony Fauci. According to the joint statement, once booster shots roll out in September, they will likely be offered to all Americans beginning 8 months after a person's second dose.
Just show your vaccination card and you'll get a booster.
It should be noted, however, that these plans are with regard to those who had either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. The statement went on to say that booster shots likely will also be needed for people who received the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. However, in light of the fact that the U.S. did not begin administering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine until March 2021, there is not yet sufficient data to determine the need for a booster. U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said in a White House press briefing the same day, "I want to be very clear. This plan is pending the FDA conducting an independent evaluation of the safety and effectiveness of a third dose of the Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines and the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices issuing booster dose recommendations based on a thorough review of the evidence." According to Murthy, experts are analyzing the continuing effectiveness of the Moderna vaccine as well as the other FDA-authorized vaccines. Thus far, the analyses indicate that the Moderna vaccine's effectiveness has indeed been declining over time. The Mayo Clinic's analysis indicated that the Moderna vaccine's effectiveness has declined from 86% to 76% as of July 16th. This can be considered significant, particularly when considered in light of the fact that the overall effectiveness of all FDA-authorized COVID-19 vaccines has declined to 53% as of August 2021. The bottom line is that if you received the Moderna vaccine, your body's ability to protect itself when exposed to the coronavirus responsible for COVID-19 may already be declining. This puts you at a greater risk for mild to moderate breakthrough infection with COVID-19, which can also make you contagious to others, including the unvaccinated. Fortunately, Moderna has been testing its booster vaccines in already vaccinated individuals, according to CNBC. The results indicate that the Moderna booster produces a, quote, promising immune response against COVID-19, including the Delta variant, and with risks that do not seem to outweigh these benefits, CNBC reported. Data from the Mayo Clinic regarding the continuing effectiveness of the Pfizer vaccine may be somewhat more disconcerting than comparable data regarding the Moderna vaccine, according to the White House. Such data, which was culled with respect to 80,000 vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals, demonstrates that as of July 16th, the Pfizer vaccine's effectiveness against infection declined over time from 76% to 42%. In addition, separate research conducted in Israel shows that the Pfizer vaccine has been becoming less effective at preventing both infection and the spread of COVID-19 over time, especially in light of the emergence of the particularly contagious Delta variant, according to Reuters. As with the Moderna vaccine, anyone who received the Pfizer vaccine may become more vulnerable to COVID-19 infection over time, putting them at risk for contracting mild to moderate COVID-19 and spreading COVID-19 to others. Pfizer has committed to providing the U.S. with 200 million additional doses of its vaccine from October through April 2022, according to the Wall Street Journal. The decision to move ahead with a Pfizer COVID-19 booster shot marks a reversal from the FDA's decision from just a few weeks prior that boosters would not be needed, NPR reported. The Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine presents its own unique challenges in terms of getting a booster program rolling. One reason is that the vaccine was not available to the general public in the U.S. until March 2021. In addition, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is distinguishable from the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines in that it was designed as a one-dose protocol and is not an mRNA vaccine. However, U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy revealed during the August 18th White House press briefing that he anticipates Johnson & Johnson booster shots, like Moderna and Pfizer booster shots, will become necessary, saying, "We expect more data on J&J in the next few weeks." As the information comes in regarding the Johnson & Johnson vaccine's continuing effectiveness and the safety and efficacy of a booster, the White House has pledged to keep the general public informed as to whether a J&J booster will be made available. The prevailing wisdom with regard to mixing and matching COVID-19 vaccines in general has been that individuals should stick with whatever vaccine they have gotten previously for COVID-19. In other words, if your first dose was of the Moderna vaccine, then your subsequent doses should likewise be of the Moderna vaccine. However, this may be changing, according to NPR, which pointed out that using two different vaccines against the same viral threat is not a new concept. It's known as heterologous vaccination. One example is the polio vaccine. The benefits of heterological vaccination are both scientific and practical. Regarding the latter, remember how in the first few months of the COVID-19 vaccine rollout you had little to no choice in which vaccine you would receive? Heterological vaccination means that people will be able to get their booster regardless of whether their local vaccine center is offering boosters of the vaccine they received initially. Immunologist Helen Fletcher told NPR, "If you give two different types of vaccine, then you tend to get a better immune response than if you give the same vaccine twice." Although the CDC has, as of this video, yet to address choosing a different booster from your original vaccine, they did address mixing and matching third doses among the immunocompromised, stating, "For people who received either Pfizer-BioNTech or Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine series, a third dose of the same mRNA vaccine should be used." Something of concern to many is the risk of side effects with booster shots. And as the second dose of the mRNA vaccines were often accompanied by more side effects compared to the first doses, it is something experts are considering. Jay Butler, deputy director at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, said during a press briefing, "We're keenly interested in knowing whether or not a third dose may be associated with any higher risk of adverse reactions, particularly some of those more severe, although very rare, side effects." And for recipients of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, an mRNA booster shot could produce a different set of side effects from what they experienced when they got their initial shot, Dr. Wen explained to CNBC. That being said, more information about the side effects associated with the mRNA boosters will become available as more people volunteer to receive booster shots around the world. For example, some countries, including Germany and the UK, are already giving mRNA boosters to people who received the AstraZeneca vaccine. And according to CNBC, this protocol appears to be, quote, working well with few side effects. And right here in this country, in San Francisco, California, Johnson & Johnson vaccine recipients are already eligible to request and receive a supplemental dose of one of the 2 mRNA vaccines. Rest assured that as more data becomes available, more and more information will become available too.
Singapore could reach an endemic COVID-19 state as early as the end of the year, and that's according to experts who say their prediction very much hinges on vaccination rates. As Singapore begins its transition, Sherlyn Sia looks at what the new normal could look like and what the nation needs to do to get there.
A virus that could be freely transmitting among us as we go about our daily lives. It's what COVID-19 will become in the future when it's endemic. But the good news is that it will become something less threatening, like influenza or chickenpox, and we will learn how to live with it.
It's a new normal framed by the multi-ministry task force. And while our lives won't go back to the way it was before the pandemic, it's the closest we can get, at least for the next few years.
The point is we're not trying to stop transmission anymore. We're not introducing major inconveniences to stop transmission. We accept it will transmit. We're protected by vaccination.
The key is not to pick up every asymptomatic case. What we're looking for is those who are going to get ill, those who are going to get complications, and we hospitalize them promptly and make sure they're monitored closely.
That means we can meet up with more friends and loved ones. The workplace will be more lively, and events with large crowds can resume. But as for when we'll reach this stage, it all hinges on vaccination rates.
We're not actually waiting for anything else. And we know once the vaccine is implemented, then COVID's a mild disease. The target is everybody, but I think once we get to 80%, that's very close. What month? I'm not sure what that is, but I'd say it's around the end of the year.
Currently, around 40% of the Singapore population has received both doses of an mRNA vaccine.
But in the meantime, Singapore remains in a transition phase, and this is where the unvaccinated could see some limitations for now. For example, restrictions in group sizes when it comes to dining out.
The MTF has said it's considering varied measures for those inoculated under the national program. When at least half of the populations completed their vaccine regimen, those fully vaccinated could dine in groups of up to 8, while the cap of 5 may remain for those who have not received their shots. As for travel, there may be control measures when borders reopen, similar to what's already in place for some vaccine-preventable diseases.
For example, the yellow fever vaccine is mandatory for people coming into Singapore from countries which are yellow fever endemic.
Testing will remain a key feature in the days ahead, but for different reasons. There may not be a need for massive contact tracing to quickly ring-fence infections. Instead, it will be to ensure activities can go on safely. People can monitor themselves with fast and easy tests, such as self-test kits.
Many other countries, the test kits are sent to their house and they are expected to do it every 1 to 3 days to assure themselves as well as the people in the neighborhood that they are not carrying the virus. I do envision such a day where people might have to do testing before they go out.
And we're already seeing the importance of testing and vaccination as we move towards an endemic future. We're just about a month away now from Singapore's next landmark event, the National Day Parade, returning in person this year to the Marina Bay floating platform just behind me. All performers and spectators have to be fully vaccinated and undergo pre-event or routine testing. And this will set the stage for such large-scale events in the new normal.
In tomorrow's SG Pulse, we look at the retail industry and its plans as Singapore transitions to an endemic COVID-19 state.